The battle between Tempo Storm and Team 12 may be over, but it feels like the war for the top of North America has just begun. And Jay-How, we have two more teams who are here to prove that they are in the running for the top spot of North America.
Yeah, Team Freedom obviously acknowledged by some of the other top teams thinking they could move into that 2-3 spot. Obviously they got off to a good start, but HeroesHearth had a little bit of a bumpy start, and they're kind of my dark horse to kind of fit into that potential 3/4 spot. I think week one probably wasn't their best showing, but I'd say this is definitely going to be a very telling matchup for both these teams.
Yeah, let's check out the standings, but I feel the same with you about HeroesHearth. We have a lot to talk about with them as far as drafting is concerned, but it kind of felt like initiation for them because they had to play versus Tempo in their first match, and as we've seen, Tempo Storm is looking pretty good. They're the only team to secure 2 victories, and we'll see if they can do the same over Team Freedom themselves on Sunday. Freedom versus HeroesHearth, it's still going to be a tough one for HeroesHearth.
Yeah, you know, HeroesHearth, I don't know what happened last week. I feel like it was very different from what I expected, and I expect better this week. It's hard to get much worse by their standards, but by their standards, their pedigree, that everything that they've had over their career seems like it should be much higher. And I think that, you know, whatever came out of last week was probably a big learning point, calming down a little bit, getting welcome into the league. I think this week should see a much better HeroesHearth.
Well, for 3 of them, it was their first showing back in HGC, 2 of them. And then for 3 of them, it was their first showing in HGC. So let's see how HeroesHearth can do versus Team Freedom as we get into this match.
I mean, we're coming in as the longest standing roster in HGC because pretty much every other roster made changes and LFM started after us. And I think all except for 1 or 2 teams, probably 2, actually made worse roster changes and didn't improve, at least in the short term. Maybe long term they could grow as a team, but I think mechanical and skill base wise, a lot of teams took a step back.
They're such an interesting team. Team Freedom is the most wildcard team, I think, in NA right now. So obviously Team Freedom lost Kieran Dansky, and people are thinking, wow, these were their best players. There's just no way that they can bounce back from this. But I actually think the core of Team Freedom, you know, consists of 3 really, really strong players. And bringing in Lutano, who's a new blood, plays all the time, you know, loves the game, and Yoda, who's got the brain like no other. I honestly think that team could be really good and potentially fighting for a top spot in NA. So out of all the teams, they're the one that I don't really have a read on yet, but I'm also respecting a lot. So I look forward to playing against them.
HGC is kind of the newcomer in the scene, but the fact they made it through by winning the Crucible make them, in my opinion, a bit more legit. Compared to like LFM that actually got through by 1 team disbanding, even though I'm not removing anything to LFM. But I think HHG kind of have some good potential on the long term, but I think as far as we play our game, it's going to be a series once again that we can win.
I think HeroesHearth is a team full of potential. I think they could actually be like top 4 team. They've been doing pretty well so far, so I'm expecting great things from them. And hopefully that motivates other team and opens, like, seeing them grow in the HGC, and like hopefully the amateur scene sees that, you know, there's potential out there, like, to make it to the top.
McIntyre giving a shout out to the potential of the new members of Team Freedom. You know, talking about Lutano and his ability to make plays. We saw that right from the start in their series versus Galeforce Esports. He averaged 3.5 kills per game. That was only beaten by Sam, who averaged 4, and it was tied with Glaurung at 3.52. But then when you look at the Genji, which he had 2 games on last week, he had 4 kills per game with the Genji and hasn't died yet with the hero, actually.
It's pretty impressive. You know, it was one of our talking points last week when we saw Lutano.
Yeah.
He came in from the open, or in the open division early part, ended up with even in death, played in the second phase, but things didn't quite work out for that team. got picked up by what we would consider a little bit better team. And I think it really gives him that time to shine. And as McIntyre said, he's kind of made his way up from playing the Hero League ranks through Open Division. I know you've compared him to a few other players that have had the similar success.
Yeah, looking at Poik did the same thing, was got up through the Hero League and then ended up on Zealots, and then his potential was spotted out by Team Dignitas, and now Dig is on track to maybe be the top team in Europe. And we'll see if Lutano and the rest of Freedom can do the same. Let's get into this best-of-5 series between HeroesHearth and Team Freedom. Talking about, as we look at the battlegrounds, HeroesHearth now. They had some very interesting drafting set up for them. A lot of emphasis on Leoric. Probably the top prioritized team for when they look at Leoric, picking him a lot before the bans or secondary bans. Even talked about from Caterpillar, if you just allow them and know that they're going to get Leoric and Greymane, then you can get pretty much whatever else you want, because they're always going to get those.
The studio's doing that thing again. When you said Leoric was over your shoulder, now Greymane is. I don't know what it is about this setup. I feel like I'm being trolled. But yeah, I mean, every single game, not only that, but they had Greymane highly prioritized,
Yes.
as well as Leoric, probably higher than most other teams
Yes.
would. It really felt, I don't know, it's almost weird for me to say, because when I casted them in the Open Division, going through the Crucible, I actually noted that this is one of the most diverse hero pool teams I've seen, and I've seen them do well on many teams, on different results, you know, offline, things like that. And I was really surprised by that. It felt like, look, we're up against a tough team. Let's go with what we're comfortable with, instead of maybe spreading their wings a little bit. I feel like it just did not live up to the team that I thought they were going to be in week 1. So I imagine they reviewed a lot of that. I'm sure we're going to see some changes.
All right, now we're going to look at the Battleground pool and see what the bans are, as well as our first pick. First pick is Sky from Team Freedom. That is an old Team Freedom favorite, HeroesHearth. Bans Brax's Holdout, consistent with what we saw versus Tempo last week. And Volskaya Foundry, banned by Team Freedom. Honestly, I don't blame him. I don't want to go up against another Asmodan on Volskaya Foundry. I wouldn't want to go up against that if I were Team Freedom. They could, of course, ban out the Asmodan if that's their concern, but where one pocket strategy is there, there's probably a few more available.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't put it past Arthalon. So there's definitely something to be said for that. And, you know, when we look at Team Freedom, the Lutano pick, and then his buddy in the background, Yoda, the flexibility that they have is similar to the people that they replaced in Kieran Dansky. So can they live up to that? Can they carry this team to the success that Team Freedom had at the second part of last year? They get their opportunity to come out of the gates looking strong here to put themselves tied up at the top if they can take down HeroesHearth.
Now, Team Freedom did pick Sky Temple a lot last year, when they were a team that was more known for their team fighting and less for their macro play. That was right up until in Phase 2, until they went to the Western Clash and got all of that awesome macro knowledge from the European teams that they scrimmed against for their boot camp. So they loved Sky Temple because they could really bring the fights. And we saw that versus Galeforce Esports. They brought the fight that invades on the Bruiser camp versus Galeforce that worked out extremely well for them. So let's see how they can bring the fights. They are already getting Lucio and Hanzo, but Genji was grabbed by HeroesHearth.
Yeah, Lucio, big favorite of Collusion, so no surprise there. And we are working our way through this draft rapidly. The Genji pickup, you know, Greymane banned out against yourself, and then you make sure you lock in the Genji, making sure to either get Hanzo or Genji, but they end up with Genji. Hanzo goes to the other side. Collusion, of course, high priority on Lucio and Sky Temple. This is one of the more accelerated drafts. Gilly's pen, I think, is
My
dead.
pen died. I'm really sad. Thank you, friend. My hero.
I just use it to hold on to. So.
Oh, but now it's blue. This one was black. Everything's haywire.
Your dress is black and blue. Your paper's now black and blue.
It fits. You're right, it matches. I feel better about that. Thank
Now
you.
you just have to wear it every day so it matches and you're set. But either way, Global's taken out here as Abathur and Dahaka were both banned out for Freedom. We saw a lot of Nasmus on that flexibility. He had one of the higher KDAs on that melee role last week. And it's something that I kind of wondered how he would fit being that primary. He shifted towards that role towards the later part of last year. But when I watched this game, especially on Vala, things like that, reviewing him going in towards BlizzCon, had he stayed on that role, I actually put him near the top of North America in terms of that range role. He's accepted the role on the melee and excelled really well. I know last year going into BlizzCon, he was one of their primary shot callers, so it does really well for him to make those calls on that front line and work really well for him. He also plays a fair bit of Malphite.
Yeah, the only thing that concerned me about Nasmus, as with any role swaps, is how much time do you need to fully be able to swap into that role, to learn the intricacies, especially as the solo laner, and to make sure that you have the hero pool, the depth of that. But Nasmus played 4 different heroes. Every single game that he played versus Galeforce last week, he played a different hero. So he was proving that he already has the capacity to fully fill that role. He made some great plays. When he got caught, he did a good job, like that time on Dahaka, of drawing away Galeforce while the rest escaped and immediately dying. So showing a lot of knowledge into his role already.
Also their Abathur player, if they ever go down that. But they also wanted to deny Abathur from Heroes Hearth, potentially having that double Genji or that hatted Genji. And that's something that Arthalon kind of fits into. Genji can be either Crowan or Arthalon. They have that flexibility there. So I imagine we'll probably get another poke style or another damage dealer. We get Tychus, and we now get to see McIntyre's attempted Zeratul.
The McIntyre Zeratul. I wondered what that Leoric focus was. Whatever it was, whether it was true, whether it was for that series versus Tempo Storm, Heroes Hearth is now fully willing to abandon that. That plan didn't work for them. They got the 1 win versus Tempo Storm, but it was a win when they were massively behind in the game, and they won a 14v16 fight on 2, thanks to Crowan popping off on his Grey Mane. They are expanding just from week to week, and that's what you gotta do if you're gonna hang with the best in the HGC.
Here for Team Freedom, do we see somebody else on that back line joining Hanzo? You got to imagine they have plenty of support. They've already got their frontliner. So going up against an Uther. Lunara, not as appealing against the dive style against Genji and Zeratul, maybe post 13 a little bit, but that dive style composition supported by an Anubarak doesn't go. So the Tassadar seems to be the flavor of the day today.
Tass Hanzo all over the place. It's just like, what are we gonna get in week 2? In week 1, whole lot of Grey Mane. Week 2, and some Jaina too, that's true. Week 2, Hanzo Tassadar. Here it is.
We had Ariel earlier as well. Didn't see that coming, but ended up paying off late game. But in this draft setup, it gives you that protection, gives you that reveal. It seems to be, again, it's never about like, oh, I can see the hero coming. Why do I need the Oracle? Using the Oracle, using that reveal just makes him targetable. Same for the arrow from Hanzo. So Zeratul has a much tougher time engaging, because if you can just poke him down before and dismount him before he can collapse on top of you, it makes it quite a bit easier to kind of get the counter towards Zeratul. And then, of course, you know, you've got all the tools in the world to deal with him. With Lucio has the sustained damage, or the sustained healing. He's got the Sound Barrier. You've got Sanctification if needed, Dimensional Shift, and Malthael. And Hanzo, pretty hard to take down in the middle of all that.
Yeah, there is a whole lot of sustaining going on between the Tyrael, the Tassadar, and the Lucio shielding. So as long as they can keep you alive through the initial jump in from the Zeratul, things should look good. It's almost Korean level of supporting like we saw last year. Let's see how it works out for Team Freedom, or if Heroes Hearth can get their first win over Team Freedom. We'll see you on Sky Temple.
Team Freedom here, trying to remain undefeated as Collusion has the Battle of Hair against his counterpart on Heroes Hearth. Collusion will be on that Lucio, Yoda on the Tassadar, Lutano will be trying to do his best to carry this team on the Hanzo, Zugrug on Tyrael, and Nasmus rounding it out on Malthael.
And for Heroes Hearth Esports, flexing out with the Freedom Sprays. BBJ, support player, playing Uther. Ishbu the Warrior on Anubarak. McIntyre will be showing us his Zeratul skills. Arthalon on Tychus, and finally Crowan playing that Genji.
So BBJ, Collusion, both supports, both with long hair. You think they're going to look across each other and be like, look, man, my hair is cooler. I can't really do it, but I can definitely beat you with my support.
Well, it kind of depends, because there's a lot more hair on Heroes Hearth than just that.
As evidenced by their lead-in video.
Looking at the level 1 talents, a lot of globe talents for Heroes Hearth between Tychus, Zeratul, and Anubarak. On a Pale Horse is the choice for Malthael, Nasmus, so that he can make quicker rotations between the lanes. Not trying to battle a Dahaka, as you often see when you see that pickup, trying to make sure that he can keep up with the global, or at least do his best. But he might still be doing the same versus the Genji, or with the Zeratul not showing up on the mini-map, just wanting to make sure that he can rotate to his team, if necessary, very quickly.
McIntyre lurking around top, making sure to at least body soak that XP to not give up. Much without the ammo, it's not too bad to have Zeratul as your solo laner to do things like this. You give up marginal amounts of health, but this is a very different map because that marginal health does add up, because the temples will be assaulting your structures.
And Team Freedom has changed up from the norm, not going for the early giants, instead starting off with getting the bruisers in the top lane. That will assist Malthael, and they're even going to go along with that with Lucio and Tyrael. And seeing that, we haven't seen an invasion just yet from HeroesHearth. Master are keeping an eye on that, but it does set up for a big push in the bottom lane. HeroesHearth are going to move on up, not pushing along with those giants, just letting them freely do some damage.
The amount of globe talents I'm sitting there looking at. HeroesHearth.
Yeah.
It's like globe, globe, globe. You got to make sure you try and get value out. Of course, the most difficult one is that regen master because it takes 30 for a Nubarak, so it is a much more late game style. So we see HeroesHearth responding to this night camp in the top. We'll see if maybe they can get that mage down and then try and dive underneath that. The Tychus, Uther, and a Nubarak, it looks like they're just going to hold the fort while the rest of the team tries to put in some work bottom.
We'll have the first shrines spawning in 30 seconds up in the top and mid. A lot done with that bottom. Nasmus was sent to the bottom, but having the couple of heroes from HeroesHearth, looks like the response that they had was really good. They made sure Team Freedom didn't get too much done with that top camp and set them up nicely for the second temple phase in the bottom. Also giving them some experience making sure that they're at least keeping up, if not pulling ahead. Now they can also get their bruisers, which they're working on for that too. Team Freedom, though, even though they got some tower damage up in the top, seems like they want to posture a lot more around the mid-temple, at least to start the phase.
One thing I am particularly interested in is the direction this Tychus build goes, because he did go in the rhythm, which is as you continue to get more auto attacks on that minigun, it increases the duration of the minigun, which is percent-based damage. Tyrael doesn't have an incredibly high health pool, neither does Malthael, but they're both frontliners that tend to try and sustain on the front line, and Malthael's all about staying in, getting percentage-based damage done himself, and healing off of that. So Tychus versus Malthael as the game progresses could be an interesting matchup as we go, because technically Tychus, if he charges that up enough, could hold in a while, and if he goes that's the stuff which heals you off of that minigun damage at 13, might be able to survive against those tormented souls.
HeroesHearth ate their Wheaties for breakfast. They have the setup for the bottom, now they went to the top, they had the later camp, and pushing back Malthael every time. Malthael seems to be the response from Team Freedom, but Freedom are going to do what they love and try to get a team fight going now that they've hit level 7.
They're trying to get in there for now, but the rest of this temple will be channeled by Team Freedom. So far, so good. All things on the side of HeroesHearth have a slight advantage, do have that fort down, so things definitely off to a much more positive start this week. It seems like they're much more settled. You gotta imagine, once we get our first official team fight, as it's 0 kills to 0 this game, could potentially open up. See if Kroan can give us some resets on Genji.
Yeah, the heroic ability spike for both teams is large. That Genji having Dragon Blade, but then you look over on the other side and having Sanctification and the Tormented Souls. That's where Team Freedom is looking to find those heroic abilities. They're not being too aggressive, but I do want to note that Team Freedom found themselves in a similar situation on Sky Temple versus Galeforce Esports, where they were a little bit more behind in the rotations. And every time that happened, Freedom did an awesome job of knowing where exactly they need to make a play to catch back up and stabilize in the game. So expect Team Freedom to look for that point, have that plan set up, and then execute on that as soon as it comes into fruition. And maybe now, as we see all 5 of Team Freedom grouping in the bottom.
Yeah, Zeratul and Genji both in the top and mid respectively as Team Freedom. They're going to have to rotate back, make sure not to give up too much XP before the next temple phase, which will be at the bottom. So HeroesHearth with a slight lead getting towards 10, so long as Nasmus rotates over to that top left lane. Shouldn't give up too much experience as that lane pushes in.
Yeah, the bigger issue for Team Freedom down in the bottom, they've already lost one fort in the top lane. get the bruisers, although Crowan's spotted this out. And Crowan and Fam are closer to heroic abilities. But Crowan swift strikes out. The problem is that heroic abilities are online for HeroesHearth and the temple's activating in 20 seconds. So what do Team Freedom want to do about it? Do they come down? Do they set up to posture so that they can start the fight as soon as heroic abilities happen? Do we see them push in somewhere else? For now, they just have to give up their giants until they can get heroics. They don't want to do anything with HeroesHearth.
Yeah, if they hard push top, HeroesHearth will counter bottom, potentially get the boss, and it's just way too much to deal with. Hanzo just ripping through those siege giants with a scatter arrow damage there, but that does give them the race that they're looking for. On a Pale Horse is allowing Malthel to rotate down. Gilly on the mini-map, we also see Zeratul rotated top. We'll see if Team Freedom tries to take advantage of that.
Yeah, they definitely should now that they have heroics. Still a question of what's going to be picked up by Hanzo. I'm not sure that this is the game we see Dragon Strike. Nope, Dragon's Arrow. There was one earlier, the Dragon's Lair paired with the Entomb in Europe. But with the Temple, Zeratul feeling like he needed to deal with the bruisers in the top, HeroesHearth giving away some of the shots. They can do that though because they were the ones who got a lot of extra structural damage done, so they have the towers to kind of soak up some of those shots, and they were able to get some of their own.
Yeah, I mean, if you end up losing the fight bottom, you potentially give up boss to a Hanzo, you give up the top to that camp. I mean, it could have snowballed at that point, and so is it the risk versus reward? The risk, you would give up a lot, and the reward, would you really get that much out of it? So taking a much safer approach here is HeroesHearth. You know, safety is not always going to win you the game, but I think right now just getting into the rhythm here, probably what they want to do.
McIntyre went for the double blink. Final few shots fired from this bottom temple. HeroesHearth aren't going to hang around. There's nothing to fight over here. They don't want to lose anybody. They are respecting Team Freedom, their team fighting prowess, that they are considered one of the top teams in North America. At least give the respect in the first game until you're feeling out your opponent.
Yes, I mean, so far so good. We haven't had a kill yet, but that's not to say that things won't open up and potentially have those big team fights. But right now, it seems like both teams are willing to just play it out a little bit safe. We don't see the invades that we see from other teams. We see a little bit of an invade in terms of scouting out between Zeratul and Genji, but they're going to find a whole lot of reveals while they're there.
So talking about the team fighting for Team Freedom, Malthel ideally in on top of a lot of HeroesHearth with the Tormented Souls having the Sanctification to enable him too. Is there any concern about being able to get kills from that, having some sort of execution, or do you feel like, you know, Tyrael is enough to be able to be back there and the rest of the damage from Team Freedom?
Yeah, you know, you bring up a good point because, you know, Tassadar, obviously, you know, there's not really the auto attack build we saw in parts of last year. It's more about the AoE damage. Same for Malthel. The one thing that does help is that you're going against an Uther. So depending on the flank positions of Zeratul and Genji, you might be able to reserve some of the heals. And finishing it is going to be up to Hanzo. Getting that lockdown, I think, is going to be key. It's not going to be a 1 or 2 person effort. It's going to be a full 5-man effort. And I think that, you know, if Malthel can get in there and get that down, then the rest of the team can kind of collapse, and they can start to look for those kills.
Team Freedom has displayed that synergy before, 5-man effort. HeroesHearth, they have a lot of different variety in how they can get kills. McIntyre can wait until the attention of Team Freedom is drawn elsewhere and then maybe go in and try to harass the Hanzo, force out the natural agility, at least force him back. The poke from Tychus will be really nice, and then there's Dragon Blade for when things start to heat up for Crowan.
Collusion giving chase there on Lucio. Neither team going bottom. We don't have the globals that we would traditionally see in this game, so both teams willing to commit 5 members here to the middle as Ishbu gets knocked off by the Anubis there. McIntyre sneaking in a little bit, trying to get a little bit of damage in.
Yeah, Crowan on one side, McIntyre on the other. Tormented Soul is about to begin as Nasmus is out. He gets thrown away, but Ray strikes right back in. The Cocoon came out too. There was quite a few heroic abilities, but it's Team Freedom who used everything, hoping that they could get the kill, and now without Tormented Souls, and more hesitant to get back into the fight.
Yeah, and that's kind of the part where I think we're going to see a little bit of struggle as Crowan on the backside taking a lot of pressure, but on the front, Zugra goes down on Tyrael. No trait value there except for on one Beetle, but so far, Team Freedom still being the aggressors.
Oh, Crowan, last second Dragon Blade. BBJ keeps Crowan alive through the Dragon Blade and the Divine Shield. Wow, that was a close one. Collusion still chasing Arthlon down. Those tickles of Lucio eventually might amount to something. Team Freedom used a lot at the beginning of that fight, wanted to be able to go back in. Classic sleight of hand misdirection from HeroesHearth for Crowan to go into the back line and then focus on Tyrael in the meantime.
No D shield, but you do have a cocoon. We'll see as the rest of the team. Tyka's just now coming back, but Ishbu and team, they're holding. The longer this holds, the better it is. Nasmus is standing on point. Gilly, we got to fight over the boss.
Yeah, Nasmus is getting really low, trying to keep himself alive until Zugger can be brought back out of the cocoon. He does. He lives. He holds the point. Sanctification perfect. The sound barrier perfect as Lucio tries to boop off HeroesHearth. But now there's not very much left. Two have already been killed as Team Freedom is on the run from HeroesHearth.
Oh, McIntyre going off there, getting the kill, helping to get his team the lead. They get the boss. There's still a temple at the bottom. They're going to push in on this fort. Make sure and get the fort down before you go to the temples. That way you get more value out of those temple shots. The middle will be assaulted by, it'll be assaulted by the temple. Middle will be assaulted by the temple when they go. And that way that bottom temple just gets max value here. They'll get 16, and Team Freedom won't be able to push into this. So I like this call by HeroesHearth to be aggressive. Let's just hope they're not too aggressive.
Yeah, 5 kills to 0. HeroesHearth gets 16 along with that boss. Nasmus is going to go in with the Tormented Souls. They have the Dragon's Arrow as the follow-up too, but there's the problem trying to actually secure the kills, especially as Ishbu has a great cocoon to slow down the chase of Nasmus. Hanzo's still doing his best, but that Impale Ishbu making all the plays necessary to keep his support alive.
HeroesHearth overplaying their hand just a little bit. Now BBJ is so low on health and mana that that 16 tier advantage doesn't matter. They are just on a long retreat. Ishbu doing his best with the Impale to get his team there. Collusion and team, they've got to get those. Those scatter arrows are terrifying. HeroesHearth overplayed just a little bit. I feel like they could have gotten more out of that, but they did get some bottom keep damage, set up a win condition later.
I cannot believe BBJ lived in that run back. But they were trying as best as they could to absorb the scatter arrows. The impales were on point. The slowdown was on point for HeroesHearth. Very well done. Still with the 16 advantage. Team Freedom had a few shots. And they'll have a big minion push in the top that they're going to use to go up and take out that final fort, just evening out the experience. This is what I talked about, evening out the structures, the structural advantage for HeroesHearth 2. Team Freedom have a great understanding, especially on this map, of knowing what they need to do to make sure that they're always in a position to set up a good team fight and take the game back in their control.
Well, they're going to see a heavy push top. I wouldn't be surprised if we see HeroesHearth just make this a base race, try and get on this. D-Shield is available. They don't have incredible siege damage. And right now, they're kind of getting juked because Tyrael and Lucio are still showing on the minimap. They have not Hearth back. And the siege damage potential of a Zeratul Genji is not very high. And now I think that camp on the top right side should get a bit more value than it probably would have. Heads up play by Team Freedom to soften up the map a little bit in their favor as well.
Yeah, that's that experienced decision-making coming in droves for Team Freedom. They'll get their bruiser camp to keep that top lane pushed. They've lost a keep, Team Freedom have, to HeroesHearth. They're still down a level, but they have opportunities if they need, and they're going to need it. They just have to be able to take advantage of that. But so far, the team fighting has been a weird one this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's 5 kills to 0, and it seems like HeroesHearth is just barely getting away. It's just...
Holy Ground will help with that.
Yeah, Holy Ground will definitely lock them in, but we'll see. Genji, he's cool. I'm cool. I'm just going to dip on out of here. He's got a little bit of mobility.
Just a little bit. Those Overwatch heroes, you know? They're tricky.
I don't know. I haven't heard too much about him. Either way, we got Crowan going in. He's still looking for those opportunities. You know, the race towards 20 is in HeroesHearth's favor. There's double temple phase. They have a keep down, but they're by no means in a very advantageous position. Team Freedom, if they take the top temple, will take that top keep down. So Team Freedom very much in this, and the fact that the temples are spawning pre-20, this is still anybody's game.
That it is, especially when it is an opponent as scary as Team Freedom. You don't want to let your guard down even for a second, or you will find yourself being team wiped and losing the game that you worked so hard to get control in.
Yeah, the boss still 45 seconds away, so there's no real play on that just yet. fight here, looking to break out Zeratul in the bottom part, continuing to try and push those catapults, try and put Team Freedom on a timer, also soaking 20. It's a good heads-up play there. That's going to give them something. We can also see Tychus appears to be capturing the siege camp. Once they get that bottom lane pressure, it will make this mid and top temple that much easier for Heroes Hearth to contest and try and take advantage of this game.
Freedom have to do something. Otherwise, Heroes Hearth is going to hit 20, have that bottom lane push with the double camp, and then just go to the boss with their 20 advantage. Team Freedom will have to fight without it. Freedom are hanging around on the temples. They didn't go to the top one. They're looking for the fight in the mid. They're not getting that fight. Heroes Hearth are just about to 20. This is the moment. They have to get this kill.
BBJ getting caught out of position, forced to use Divine Shield.
Holy
That's not going to be enough to keep him alive. But we got Zeratul on the core with a whole bunch of minions, and that is going to be something that they have to Hearth back for. Heroes Hearth. And we see Tassadar is back, but that just opens up a window for Zeratul to potentially go middle and look for picks now that he's got the full rewind at 20.
Yeah, Team Freedom are in a dangerous, precarious position, all spread out the way they are. They had two trying to deny the mid-temple. It's Nasmus and Collusion. Sound Barrier was used to keep him alive. He used Tormented Souls too. They'll fire in a few shots from that temple being fired out as Tyrael is remaining in the top. Team Freedom are separating in a way that they have been able to get through what seems to be a really tough situation. I am impressed.
Yeah, I don't want to be too harsh, but BBJ getting caught out there, costing his team. It's a tough spot to be in when you're there, when it's like, all right, I can stall. There's not a lot of hard CC, and the minute that Dragon Zero comes in, and now you don't get the temple value, you've given up the top keep, and you also have a boss that's here. Uther is still just now spawning. So there's no D-Shield. They would have to fight this without a boss. So Team Freedom has taken control of this game.
Well, for the Holy Ground, a boop off just to be sure, and that boss is easy money for Team Freedom. They've separated Heroes Hearth in a big way. The Dragon Zero caught at Genji now. As Zeratul goes down, they're looking for the Genji kill. Before the windup can even come in, Genji falls down. Victim to Team Freedom, the Team Freedom team fighting that we know and love. They get the boss. They're chasing down the Odin. They're looking for a win.
Yeah, Arthalon, even if he survives here, this means that it's even less that you have going towards the defense of that boss, and it feels like this is probably, oh, he's got on a pale horse. He's got to get the dismount there. But again, this boss, it's at half health. You might be in this game, but there's potential it could end here. I mean, the boss should take the keep. That means 2 keeps are down.
Sync is down, but Sound Barrier's still up. But the sync with the Holy Arena was the big game changer too. This boss is getting pretty low. Not getting the extra kills. They'll at least take out this keep. The boss goes on. Team Freedom will leave Heroes Hearth keepless if they can't win the game outright.
Heroes Hearth now with no keeps alive. They're going to have to clear out the lanes. The temple's active in 15 seconds. And they don't have much in the way of shields because those catapults are doing what they're supposed to be doing and taking down structures. I mean, they've got to finish those catapults, and they have to take a fight. This is a desperation fight against a Sound Barrier and Tormented Souls Team Freedom.
No Dragon Blade for 20 seconds. No Sanctification for just about the same. We may see the stall out until both of those teams can have those crucial heroics. Team Freedom are going to set themselves up for success by getting this camp in the top. There's already catapults pushing in the top lane. And they have the structures to soak these shots. They have the time that Heroes Hearth don't. Gonna get on to the point now.
Yeah, and Heroes Hearth cannot go. You see Odin popped. McIntyre's joined the fight. Catapults have them on a timer at the top. We've got the cocoon there, and Nasmus is going down. That's the first kill. Dragon Blade is out. Lutano is low on the backside, but we've got ourselves a Sound Barrier.
Sound Barrier and Sanctification to follow. Keeps everyone else alive. And Malthael, he's back. He's coming back in. Zeratul goes down with a Dragon Arrow out. Locked down the Odin. The Odin's still getting fantastic poke as they zone it away from Lutano in the nick of time as he jumps over a wall and keeps himself alive. That camp's pushing top. There's no Zeratul. Heroes Hearth are running for their lives. The shots start to bring down the core.
Yeah, this should be enough. Temple shots are going to do quite a bit of damage. No Zeratul. They'll probably just kind of walk in. Hard approach this core. It's down to 75%. There's no Dragon Blade. You don't. Oh, there goes BBJ. He should have Redemption up. He'll get a few heals off there on Crowan. It feels like it's the beginning of the end, Gilly.
That it does, especially if they can get this Arthalon kill. They're still looking for kills over the core. Yoda will be the focus as he dimensional shifts. They're sieging it down. Yoda's the big deal. Heroes Hearth know that they're trying to focus him, and they do bring him down eventually. The core is sitting at 20%. Lutano and the rest. As Lutano goes down, bring out the core. Team Freedom wins game 1.
Got a dance party going on here.
We had some strobe lights going for a second.
Yeah, that was. I'll say this: Heroes Hearth, as much as they've been scrimming and things like that, the Pro Division brings a very different feel to the way a lot of the games are played. And that, I think the overextension at the bottom lane, where BBG just barely escapes, I feel like they could have got more value out of that. When they tried to get that backdoor push with the Zeratul, it's normally to force a response, and then they have to be held there because you have to respect the Siege Giants, you have to respect the catapults. So that buys you 10 to 15 seconds against a Tassadar. That's your opportunity to come back up and then force your advantage. And it seems like they just made a few minor misplays in their macro game, and that really caused a lot of problems for them. They had to regroup. They didn't have to sustain in heals. BBJ all of a sudden is low in mana, low in health, forcing out them to Hearth back. And I think that just, those are moments that they definitely need to learn from. You can't just get by on mechanical skill alone. You can't get by on team fighting alone. There were a few misplays there, but you got to give credit to Team Freedom to recognize the opportunities that they had to get back in the game. A closely contested game, but I feel like one that Heroes Hearth might have let slip away.
Yeah, Freedom is so good at recognizing those opportunities and making them for themselves and taking advantage and being all in when they present themselves. But I still feel like Heroes Hearth is not out of this series, and it was night and day, their series versus Tempo to here. They were controlling rotations. They had the first keep down. They had Freedom on the back foot, so Freedom had to look for those plays. They forced that boss. And whereas versus Tempo, largely Heroes Hearth was down already a level and a half by the time Tempo hit 10. So they're being a lot more proactive in their rotations, and that first game looked a lot better. You clean up those few things that you mentioned, Jay Howe, and Heroes Hearth could be one of our top teams.
Yeah, it's not a huge gap that you have to make. It's just practice, go back, study, look at replays, and it is a best of 5. They could easily come back and win the next 3 games. Also, that was Team Freedom's map pick, so now they'll have the opportunity. Heroes Hearth, do they pick the map or do they pick first pick? And they'll have that opportunity. So, you know, it's not like the most terrible thing to ever have happen. I just feel like a missed opportunity like that now, where does that set you in the future? And as long as this team stays together, they can only get better from here. But that right there, again, it just feels like it slipped away from Heroes Hearth.
Well, last time versus Tempo, Heroes Hearth, in losing, ended up picking Battleground Choice. Let's see if that's the same. They had Volskaya Foundry as one of their picks.